Alright, so this is going to be a little bit of a longer discussion based off of the quick Warrior DPS guide that I put out. I'm going to go over some of the choices here. My gear is not perfectly runed out. I have brutality and different things just to hit these different milestones, but they're also just runes I had, easier to make. You can try to aim for different sets that are going to help put out more damage. Haste is nice, just to be able to move around faster, but Assassin will give you a little bit more assault power. Weapon Specialist is nice because it'll give you an extra 1% at least at its base, and then it also grants an expose that'll reduce the physical resistance of the mob by 240. And you can spend tons of money on different runes if you want to. You don't really have to get these sets, at least at the dungeon level, but they're just kind of helpful. If you can kind of fit them into different slots, do so. But don't go out of your way or spend tons of money, especially if you're beginning, because you're going to be replacing a lot of your gear relatively quickly, and investing in it's kind of moot at that point. So just do whatever you can, but try to focus on putting assault power, brutality, strike through until you get to the cap, and this is by no means the cap. I think you want to try to get to around 11%, somewhere around there. In dungeons or in raids, you'll have espers or certain spec warriors lower the strike through, or lower the deflect chance so that you don't have to get your strike through as high. But for the sake of dungeons, try to get it, around, I'd say 8 or 9% at the very least, to make your life a little bit easier, to get a little bit more damage out, so you're not getting deflected constantly. But yeah, that's just the rune choices, and I wouldn't go too much into it. Just do what you can to fill those slots, but don't leave them empty because they do cover a lot of gaps. And they do boost your DPS up quite a bit. As for the build that we're going with, this build is primarily focused on putting out decent damage while you're also learning the rotation, and it also gives you utility as well. Otherwise, you'd have things like Augmented Blade if we weren't going for something as utility or simple base, where this is going to increase your damage by 8%. And the only thing is you have to start managing your kinetic energy, and you have to toggle this on and off, because the longer you have it on, the more it starts decaying your kinetic energy. It gains stacks that over time will take away more and more kinetic energy. There are builds to help reduce that, but for the sake of this one, I wanted to keep things simple. So with that in mind, we're going with Tier 8 Relentless Strikes just to build your kinetic energy up a lot faster. It's going to be a little bit easier to maintain. This build you're almost never going to go below like 800 kinetic energy. You really have to be trying to do that. But for simplicity's sake, and because you're going to be spamming a lot, I decided just to have it as, all the way maxed out, so it's doing as much damage as it can. Rampage is going to be the bread and butter of this rotation. The entire build is focused around getting as many rampages out as possible. As you see, the tier 4 says that using Savage Strike or Tremor will reduce the cooldown of Rampage by 3¼ seconds, and it's got a cooldown of 7 seconds already. So as you'll see in the rotation, it gets up pretty quick, and having both of those abilities on your bar will mean that you'll be able to have, between every rampage, one of those on use, so that you'll be able to get more rampages out. So it'll reduce the cooldown every time. We have Leap just to get from A to B quicker, get out of telegraphs if you need to, get into the fight easier. It builds kinetic energy as you jump in, has a little damage attached onto it. That's why I choose it over Bum Rush, which just has defensive elements to it. Savage Strike we just have at the base. This ability works well with Breaching Strikes because it has a relatively long animation to it that you can't break just using it and hitting other abilities. As you saw, the global cooldown there kind of went a little long as well, but it does reset, so we have it on here, and it works well with Breaching Strikes, which I'll show in the rotation as well. And then Tremor you have to spec into to get it, but it has a relatively short animation to it for people who are just coming back to the game who haven't played for a very long time. Tremor used to have a cast time to it. It was something along the lines of like 1.5 seconds or 1.25 seconds, something like that. It no longer has that. It just instantly pushes it out. There's probably a short animation to it, but again, you'll see that in the rotation how long it goes through. It's much shorter than it used to be. There aren't any support abilities in here, and utility, we tier 4 kick. Again, this is for utility within dungeons. You could put this in for more damage on trash packs and whatnot, but I like having this just because more often than not, your other DPS aren't going to be interrupting as much, especially if they're new as well. They're not going to really have an idea of what to do. And Warrior is just one of the more versatility classes in the game. They have a ton of utility when it comes to putting out damage and handling things, such as putting out like defense grids or interrupts or tethering things, whatever. It's a ton of utility. So I keep tier 4 kick just to have 2 interrupt armor, and I have grapple as well. I talk about it in my tanking video where you can use the tier 4 and kick to reduce their interrupt armor, because more often than not they'll have 2 interrupt armor. So you can use that to reduce it to 0, and then you can use grapple to pull them back, so that if there's pads coming by, or if there's already a group kind of close by, and you don't want your DPS maybe clipping them and pulling extras or body pulling, you can really help out your tanks in this way. And also, if you have an engineer tank, they might just try to range tank it, and if you have a stalker or you want to hit the mobs, then bringing them back can make your life a little bit easier, and also the tank and the healer don't have to worry about pulling other mobs. So yeah, after that's just the abilities. Now we're going to kind of go into the amps real quick. Get these 3 strike through amps just should make sense. You want to get strike through, you want to not get deflected, because that nullifies all your damage. So 3 into there. For this build, again, this is a dungeon build, but putting these into cooldown helps get things up quicker. But really, I just want to get to kinetic drive here, so that if you are running between mobs, you're going to be able to get in, get out really quickly. You're going to be able to keep your kinetic energy up anytime you have to move between mobs. So it's kind of nice just to have that, just to make sure your kinetic energy doesn't drop, and in fact goes up as you sprint. But you have to make sure you're sprinting and not just running, just walking around, whatever the normal movement speed is. The first 3 in all of these, because it's crit assault power and crit severity, just should be basic DPS skills. Power hitter is going to be increasing your crit severity by 5%, stacks 4 times, so it's going to get up to about 20%. In dungeons, you should be critting enough to get that up to the 4 stacks almost every time. In raids, it might be a little bit different, because you might be getting deflected a little bit more. But at least for dungeons, it's going to be really strong, even with your base stats. Berserker is anytime you use your innate, it's going to deal 10% more damage. What you might have noticed before on older builds is that this used to be something completely different, where you'd explode. It was called detonate. Every time you use your innate, they've changed it so that it's not as bursty for PvP, but it still has a lot of damage and meat to it. Laceration, I like to just use laceration just because it applies to mobs. I don't like radiate because of certain mechanics, like in Sword Maiden there's the chimes that are going around, so if you hit, if you have radiate going off, radiate might hit them, and if radiate hits them, then you're going to be getting stacks, and you're going to make it harder for your tank. So laceration is just good, because when you're hitting something, it's going to actually hit it and not hit other things around it that you don't want to hit. We got Kinetic Fury here. Again, this is a no-brainer. It increases your damage whenever you're above certain points of kinetic energy. At 500 it's 5%, at 750 it's 7%. That's not additive, that's not 12% total, it's just 7% once you're above 750. Trimmer is, we need to put points into it so that we get the resets for Rampage, pretty self-explanatory. And then Armor Shred reduces all resistances by 6%. Now, you can use an ability like Smackdown to do this as well, and they do work together, but they're multiplicative, so there's some kind of diminishing return whenever you use these two together, and it's not as strong. So I like to put it in there so that you have enough slots on your LAS to kind of put out different things. You can put in Leap if you need to, or you can use a Breakout or Defense Grid, whatever you really need to use depending on the situation, but this is just kind of a baseline. And you'll see I have extra ability tier points and amp points here as well, and that's just because I've unlocked those, and I wanted to do this guy to be a baseline. So this should be based off of the 45 amps you'll have and the 41 ability tier points that you'll get once you hit 50. Alright, now I'm going to go through the rotation real quick. It's going to be Relentless Strikes into Rampage. You're going to try to get as many Rampages off as you can throughout this entire rotation. And then we're going to go Savage Strikes and then Breaching Strike to reset the animation on Savage Strikes so you can start getting more Relentless Strikes out. And then as soon as Rampage is back up again, you're going to cast that. As soon as that cast is done, you're going to go to Trimmer and then back to Relentless Strikes and rinse repeat from the very beginning. So we're going to go through it real quick. After you cast Savage Strike, you're going to want to try to get the Breaching Strike out as fast as you possibly can. So, get up, Rampage, Savage Strike, Breaching Strike, and then Relentless Strikes again, Rampage right there, Trimmer, and then Relentless Strikes again, and then the rotation starts over again. Savage Strike, spam, Breaching Strikes, cancels the animation, get back to Relentless Strike, casting, Rampage, oops, I didn't cast Trimmer right away, but that's fine. And there you go, that's pretty much it, and obviously use your interrupts for interrupting, and you'll be useful and doing a ton of damage in no time. So that's all for now, take care.